Hello, comrades, and welcome to another video on the Russian Revolution area of study 2. In this video, we will continue our exploration of the crises of 1921 by looking closely at the Kronstadt Rebellion. This is a key knowledge point in the study design, as you'll find out in a sec, and presented a significant challenge to the Bolsheviks, both ideologically, politically, socially, and economically. So here's a quote from a letter written by Kronstadt Sailors on the 1st of March 1921, titled "What We Are Fighting For." It says, "After the October Revolution, the working class had hoped to achieve its emancipation, its freedom. The result has been to create an even greater enslavement of the individual man. The sickle and the hammer have actually been replaced with the bayonet and the barred window for the sake of preserving the calm, carefree life of the new bureaucracy of communist commissars. Here at Kronstadt, the first stone of the third revolution has been laid." So that is a call to arms and a reason for why the Kronstadt Sailors are about to fight back against the Bolsheviks. So the key knowledge that this video will explore are the challenges the new regime faced in attempting to consolidate its power, including the Kronstadt Revolt or the Kronstadt Rebellion, either will do. Now, genuinely, the Kronstadt Revolt presented one of the most serious challenges that the new regime faced. So that's why it's got a video all by itself. We'll look at the changes and continuities in political, social, cultural, and economic conditions that influence leaders to compromise and or achieve their revolutionary ideals, including the role of the Cheka, because the Cheka played a part in the response to the Kronstadt Rebellion. We'll look at the role of significant individuals that influenced and changed society, including Vladimir Lenin, Leon Trotsky, and head of the Cheka, Felix Dzerzhinsky. And we'll look at the diverse revolutionary experiences of social groups and their responses to the challenges and changes to the conditions of everyday life, including peasants and workers. So let's start by contextualizing the Kronstadt Rebellion. So by the end of 1920, the economy was in ruins. We already know that by looking at from our video on war communism. The urban population was also ravaged by hunger and disease. We know that from our last video on the 1921 famine. And the peasants in many regions were in open revolt, which we also discussed in our last video. After the Civil War, war communism continued. So grain requisitioning actually increased after the end of the Civil War. And the militarization of workplaces was reinforced by the creation of labor armies, which we discussed in our war communism video. Anger and disillusionment festered and tensions flared in late February 1921 when thousands of workers in Moscow and Petrograd went on strike over cutbacks to their bread rations and the military methods imposed on factories. Martial law was declared, with Red Army officers patrolling the streets and standing guard outside factories. The Kronstadt Sailors, who we'll talk about who they were shortly, sent a delegation to investigate the crackdown on workers' protests. One sailor wrote, and I quote, "One might have thought that these were not factories, but the forced labor prisons of Tsarist times." So making comparisons between the militarization of workplaces and Tsarism, making comparisons between the communists and the Tsarist regime. So who were the Kronstadt Sailors? So Kronstadt, pictured here, you can see in this map, Petrograd is right here, and Kronstadt was an island-based fortress which guarded the marine approaches to Petrograd, so protecting against any potential invaders. The Kronstadt Sailors were one of the Bolsheviks' most loyal fighting forces and had been described by Trotsky as the pride and glory of the revolution, the reddest of the red. That's a really significant quote to remember, that the Kronstadt Sailors had previously been described by Trotsky as the reddest of the red, so the most loyal fighting forces of the Bolsheviks. They had been one of the first military units to mutiny during the unrest of 1905, and they played an active role in the October Revolution. However, many Kronstadt sailors were from peasant backgrounds, recruited just before the February strikes, and they were angry about the increased grain requisitioning taking place in the countryside. So, actions of the Kronstadt sailors. An emergency meeting was held on the 28th of February 1921 after delegates from Kronstadt had reported what they'd seen in Petrograd with the militarized workplaces and patrolling Red Army. And so this led to a 15-point resolution known as the Petropavlovsk Resolution, which is named after one of the ships of the Kronstadt sailors. Now, this was drafted by Stepan Petrochenko, and it outlined the Kronstadt sailors' political, economic, and social demands of the government. Among their economic demands were a relaxation of war communism and improved food supplies to the cities. Their political demands included the restoration of full freedom of speech and press. Now, that goes directly against one of the very first decrees that the Bolsheviks implemented when they first took power, the decree on the press, where they limited the freedom of speech of the cadets. Another political demand was the liberation of political prisoners and a call for new Soviet elections with the slogan, "Soviets without communists." On the 1st of March, thousands of sailors rallied in Kronstadt's Anchor Square. Representatives of the government warned the sailors against taking any further action, but this warning was not heeded, and the rally endorsed the 15-point resolution. The next day, a provisional revolutionary committee was formed by the Kronstadt sailors. And this was an intentional merging of the terms provisional government and military revolutionary committee. And Kronstadt was declared free of Sovnarkom rule. Soviets without communists. So significantly, the Kronstadt sailors did not call for an end to the revolution. They were, as Trotsky had said, the reddest of the red. They did not demand greater freedom for all, only for the workers, socialists, and peasants. And they did not call for a constituent assembly. They wanted Soviet power. They wanted a return to the revolutionary values of October 1917, accusing the communists or the Bolsheviks of betraying these ideals. A Kronstadt newspaper claimed that the Bolsheviks were, quote, worse than Nicholas. The communists refused to negotiate with the sailors. Trotsky, who had once called them the reddest of the red, warned that only those who surrender unconditionally may count on the mercy of the Soviet Republic. Lenin believed that a hardline response was required to what he considered an act of counter-revolution, arguing that the 1917 revolutionaries on Kronstadt Island had been replaced by sailors sympathetic to the SRs and the Mensheviks. The Bolshevik response to the Kronstadt sailors' demands and actions. So on the 7th of March, 1921, Trotsky ordered 50,000 Red Army soldiers to launch an offensive. Petrochenko, a leader of the Kronstadt Rebellion and the person who had drafted the 15-point resolution, is quoted as saying, standing waist deep in the blood of toilers, the bloody Field Marshal Trotsky opened fire on revolutionary Kronstadt. Now, this first wave was actually driven back by the 16,000 Kronstadt sailors, so even though they were overmanned, they had the strategic advantage of being on the island, so they had a geographical advantage. Trotsky, in response, increased troop numbers to 60,000, equipped them with white camouflage and heavy artillery, and laid siege to the fortress, finally breaching it on the 16th of March. At least 10,000 Red Army soldiers and 5,000 Kronstadt sailors were killed in the siege, and having captured the naval base on the 17th of March, communist authorities sent in the Chekists. They did what Chekists do, and they executed about 2,300 sailors and sent just under 6,500 more to prison or labor camps. Thousands of sailors, including Stepan Petrochenko, managed to flee across the ice to Finland. Now, why is this significant? So the events at Kronstadt were seen by many as the point when the Bolsheviks broke with the ideals of the October Revolution. Anarchist Alexander Berkman wrote in his diary, "Kronstadt has been attacked, My heart is numb with despair. Something has died within me. Terror and despotism have crushed the life born in October. The revolution is dead. So that is a really clear indication about how people felt about the Bolsheviks and the Chekists attacking the Kronstadt Sailors. Historian Sheila Fitzpatrick argues that it was a symbolic parting of the ways between the working class and the Bolshevik Party. The communists made it clear that they would respond to any challenge to their authority with brutal opposition. Lenin is quoted as saying, "Now is precisely the moment for us to teach this public a lesson, so that for decades to come, they will not dare to even contemplate resistance." So we can see that the Bolsheviks at this point are completely authoritarian and completely unwilling to budge on any of their policies. And also they won't be threatened by any challenge to their authority. Now, the Kronstadt Rebellion, along with peasant uprisings, also did highlight the need for fundamental changes in policy, which led to the introduction of the new economic policy at the 10th Party Congress. So that brings us to the end of this video. The Kronstadt Rebellion was an incredibly significant event in terms of showing the true nature of the Bolsheviks at this point, and showing that they no longer had any sense of loyalty to their most ardent supporters. It also shows merely in the fact that the Kronstadt Sailors were willing to rebel against the Bolsheviks, shows just how far the Bolsheviks have journeyed from their original revolutionary ideals. So our next video will be on the 10th Party Congress and the introduction of the new economic policy, as well as the effects of the new economic policy. But until then, I hope you found this video interesting and useful, and I will see you next time.